December 9th, 1942. South of Kyushu, in the cold black Pacific. The moon is thin, the sea is a sheet of hammered steel, and a thin line of smoke on the horizon marks a Japanese convoy pushing west at steady speed. On the bridge of a freighter, the watch can smell coal soot and salt. Somewhere down in the cargo holds, men sleep beside crates of rubber, rice, aviation fuel, and spare engine parts stamped for the southern area fleet. They believe the ocean is a wall, far beneath them. It is a road, 200 feet down, running on electric motors. An American submarine slides through the water like a held breath. Her hull is slick with slime, her screws barely turning. Inside, the air is warm, stale, and threaded with diesel fumes that will not wash out of clothing no matter how many times it is scrubbed. The red lights make everyone look half dead. Men speak in low voices, not because someone ordered it, but because every sound feels like it might carry through steel and water. At the periscope, a young officer keeps one eye pressed to the glass and one hand on the bearing dial. He's watching the same smoke line. He watches it cut into separate shapes, one freighter, then another, then a tanker. There is an escort, two, a small destroyer or a torpedo boat, riding a nervous pattern ahead of the column. It is not a large screen. It is not aggressive. It is a set of habits. The captain stands close, his jaw tight, his face shiny with sweat. He's thinking about distance, speed, angles, and the thing that is never said aloud in a submarine before an attack: the torpedoes have been unreliable. They have run too deep. They have struck and failed to detonate. They have circled back like hunting dogs that forgot who their master was. Every man here knows someone who fired a perfect spread and watched nothing happen. Still, they have come. Because the war above the sea is loud and obvious. The war under it is quiet, personal, and full of chances. The target is a tanker. If it sinks, it does not just remove steel from the enemy. It removes fuel from ships, planes, factories, and the entire mechanism that keeps an empire moving. The captain does not talk about strategy now. He talks about the simple geometry of killing. Periscope up. A thin tube breaks the surface, so brief it might be a fish. The convoy continues, oblivious. The tanker's hull rides heavy and low. Her wake is thick. In her bridge windows, warm light glows. The captain counts the seconds between the freighter's bow wave and the tanker's. He watches the escort's turn and notes its rhythm. The firing solution builds inside the boat like pressure in a boiler. The torpedo data computer, a mechanical brain of gears and dials, clicks as men feed it bearings and estimated speed. The torpedo room forward is a cramped tunnel of steel, sweat, and oil, with 4 long fish waiting in their tubes. The torpedo men kneel beside valves and levers, hands ready, faces set. The captain's voice is calm when it comes. It is always calm when it matters most. Stand by to fire. The submarine creeps into position, closing the range. The periscope view narrows on the tanker's midsection. The captain can see the lifeboats and the rust streaks. He can almost imagine the men on deck, their routine, their confidence, their belief that danger comes from the sky, not from a shadow beneath their keel. Fire 1, a hiss, a lurch. The first torpedo leaves the tube and becomes an idea racing through the sea. Fire 2, fire 3. The boat is suddenly lighter, relieved of 3 weapons. And yet the tension becomes worse because now nothing can be controlled. Now they wait for the truth. Periscope down. Take her deep. The captain orders the dive because the escort will react to the explosion. If there is an explosion, they go down. Down. The hull creaking faintly as pressure squeezes it. Men brace. Someone wipes sweat from his upper lip. Someone else tightens his grip on a wrench he does not need. A superstition disguised as readiness. And then, through the steel, comes a muffled sound that is not quite thunder and not quite a slap. It is the ocean itself delivering a punch. A cheer starts and is cut off immediately. There is no celebrating yet. There is only listening. The sonar operator leans forward, headphones clamped, as if the enemy's propellers might whisper secrets directly into his skull. He hears confusion above. He hears the escort's screws accelerate, the nervous surge of speed. He hears the convoy begin to scatter. He hears something else, too. A grinding, bubbling roar that can only be one thing, a ship dying. The captain does not smile. He knows the other half of the bargain. For every freighter that goes down, the enemy learns. For every tanker that burns, the enemy fears. And fear changes how admirals think. It changes how convoys sail. It changes how fuel is rationed. It changes whether an aircraft squadron flies training or sits idle. It makes a nation look over its shoulder at an enemy it cannot see. Above, the escort begins its hunt. The first depth charges explode with a hollow boom that shudders through the submarine's bones. Dust drifts from pipes. Light bulbs swing. A few men instinctively duck, though there is nowhere to duck inside a steel tube. The captain holds the boat steady and deep, ordering silence. No footsteps. No dropped tools, no unnecessary pumps. The submarine becomes a ghost pretending to be a rock. Somewhere far away, in Tokyo, an admiral will read a report later that night. Another tanker gone, another freighter missing, another convoy attacked in waters that are supposed to be controlled. The admiral will tap the paper with his finger and feel something he hates more than anger: helplessness. Because the enemy is not challenging his battleships in open water. The enemy is not offering a decisive fleet action. The enemy is reaching into the arteries of the empire and squeezing, slowly, methodically, until the whole body begins to weaken. And the worst part is, the men doing it are not visible. They leave no smoke on the horizon, no flag, no warning, only silence beneath the sea. In a wardroom ashore, thousands of miles from the sinking tanker, Japanese officers bend over charts under electric light. The paper smells of ink and tobacco. A staff captain traces shipping routes with the blunt end of a pencil, lines stretching from the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies up to the home islands. The lines look clean and logical, like veins drawn on a body. The problem is that the enemy has learned where the veins run. A naval attaché report is read aloud, clipped and formal. Another convoy attacked near Kyushu. Another freighter torpedoed off Formosa. Another transport missing in the Bismarck Sea. Each incident is a single pinprick. Together they form a rash. The admirals are men raised on decisive battle. They were trained to measure victory in tonnage of capital ships sunk in the glory of a fleet action. In a day when guns speak and the strongest wins, submarines, to them, were tools for scouting and ambush against warships. Cruel weapons. Yes, but not war-changing by themselves. Now they sit in silence as the numbers creep in. It is not only merchant ships. It is the rhythm of deliveries. It is the rising delays at ports. It is the sudden shortage of spare parts at a front-line airfield. A commander in the Solomon sends a message that his fuel stocks are low and his pilots are cutting training hours. He does not write the word submarine. He does not have to. In the Pacific, the United States submarine force is still a rough blade. Sometimes sharp, sometimes dull. The boats are brave, but the torpedoes betray them. American captains have already watched perfect attacks end in nothing. Watched torpedoes hit with a hollow clank and bounce away. Watched wakes curve like knives turning back toward their own hull. The submariners do not know the full reasons. They only know that they must close the distance, fire again, take greater risks, and sometimes surface at night to finish a target with deck gun fire like pirates. That risk makes the Japanese believe they can solve the problem, so the Japanese Navy responds the way it understands. It assigns escorts, increases patrols, and orders commanders to be vigilant. There are conferences. There are directives. There are maps with red pins. A destroyer captain is lectured on sonar watch and depth charge patterns. He salutes and returns to sea, where the ocean is too big and his fuel allotment too small. The truth is brutal. Japan is fighting a vast war across an ocean empire. Every destroyer escorting a convoy is a destroyer, not screening a carrier, not hunting enemy surface forces, not rushing supplies to a threatened garrison. The admirals can feel the strain in their own order of battle. They cannot create escort ships out of willpower. They cannot conjure trained crews overnight. On a grey morning in the early 1943, a convoy commander stands on the bridge of an escort off the coast of China. He has an old-style sonar set that works well in calm water and poorly in rough seas. The sound operator is diligent, headphones pressed hard. But the ocean is alive with false echoes. A school of fish can sound like a submarine. A thermal layer can hide a hull as easily as fog hides a plane. The convoy commander watches his ships plod forward, columns of smoke trailing. He orders zigzags, not because he believes they will save him, but because doing nothing is worse. He cannot see what is beneath the swells. He can only imagine it. Then he gets the first report. A merchantman in the rear column has seen a torpedo wake. The words are enough to make every man on the bridge stiffen. Binoculars snap up. Someone shouts a bearing. The escort turns hard. Screws churning, bow knifing through waves. Depth charges are readied. The sound operator calls out contacts that may or may not be real. And far below, an American submarine captain listens to the escort's screws like a heartbeat coming closer. He is not thinking about glory. He is thinking about the math of survival. He knows Japanese escorts are often cautious with depth charges, conserving them, dropping patterns that are shallow or poorly spaced. But he also knows that one lucky string, one close enough blast, can crack valves, short batteries, turn a submarine into a coffin. The Americans have another advantage, one that is not written on any map. They are operating across the Japanese shipping lanes like wolves with a sense of the herd's direction. By 1943, they have learned the routes and the habits. They know where ships must go, because islands do not move and the home islands are hungry. Every transport must eventually nose toward Japan with food, oil, ore, and rubber. Every freighter must pass through choke points and predictable waters. Japan's empire is long, stretched, and dependent on the sea. Japan's admirals understand this in theory. In practice, they have lived for decades believing the sea itself is their shield. That distance protects them. Now distance becomes their weakness. The longer the routes, the more opportunities for silent attack. At headquarters, staff officers propose solutions that sound reasonable in meetings. More air patrols, more mines, better convoy discipline. Some suggest arming merchantmen with more guns and lookouts. Others argue for routing convoys farther from known danger areas. But danger areas shift. The Americans shift with them. The Japanese also suffer from a deeper blind spot. Their anti-submarine doctrine is not the center of their naval imagination. Their best minds, best budgets, and best new ships are aimed at the surface and the air. The convoy escorts are often older vessels, small craft, or destroyers pulled from other duties. Their sonar is uneven. Their coordination with aircraft is imperfect. Their training is rushed. Their depth charges are finite. So each time a convoy is hit, the response is reactive, local, temporary. An escort hunts where it was attacked. The submarine has already slipped away, quiet as a knife under a table. And in Tokyo, the paper reports keep piling. An admiral grips his pen harder when he signs orders for more convoy escorts. He knows he's trading one risk for another. If he weakens the fleet screen, American carriers might strike. If he neglects the convoys, the empire starves. This is why the silent war beneath the sea begins to haunt him. It offers no grand battle to win. It offers no clear enemy formation to smash. It offers only an invisible pressure that grows day by day. By spring 1943, the Japanese merchant marine captains begin to speak differently. They stop talking about schedules and start talking about luck. They do not like to sail alone anymore. They beg for escorts. They plead for air cover. They sail with lights out and radios silent, as if secrecy will hide a ship whose engines and smoke can be seen from miles away. At night, a freighter's crew stands watch with eyes aching from staring into darkness. The sea is calm. The sky is full of stars. It would be peaceful if not for the feeling that something is watching from below. In the American boats, the same night is spent with the periscope raised just a few inches, the lens sweeping the horizon in slow arcs. The captain's hands are steady. He is hunting an empire that cannot hear him coming. And still, for all the growing fear, the Japanese admirals hold on to one hope. They believe the American submarine force is limited by its own technology. They believe the unreliable torpedoes will keep the damage manageable. They believe they can ride out this threat the way they ride out storms. They do not yet realize that the storm is only gathering its true strength. July 15th, 1943. The Philippine Sea, east of Luzon. The water is warm on the surface and cold below, a layered ocean that plays tricks on sound in an American boat moving at periscope depth. Sweat runs down backs and collects at waistbands. The captain has been out here long enough to know the smell of a target before he sees it a diesel exhaust. Faint smoke, the ghost of a convoy moving somewhere beyond the horizon. The periscope comes up like a needle through skin. There it is. A small group this time. 2 merchantmen, 1 escort. Heading north. A simple meal. And yet the captain's mouth is dry because he remembers the last time. He remembers lining up a fat freighter perfectly, firing at the ideal angle, watching the torpedo run straight and true, and then hearing nothing. No explosion, no tearing metal, just the target sailing on as if the sea itself had swallowed the weapon. Afterward, his crew stared at him, not accusing, not angry, just hollow. Men who had trained for a year to do one job. Men who risked their lives to get close enough to do it. Men who then watched their torpedoes fail like empty threats. This time he orders a close approach. Closer than doctrine likes. Closer than safety prefers. The escort is not far, and the sea is bright enough that a periscope feather might be spotted by a sharp eye. Still, he closes. Because if the torpedo is going to run deep, then he will fire from a range that leaves no room for mercy. In the forward torpedo room, sailors check settings with hands that have done it 100 times and still do it like prayer. Depth setting, gyro angle, contact exploder. Everything is checked, rechecked, and checked again because they have learned to distrust even the simplest assurances. The captain fires 1 torpedo, then another. They listen. They count. The first sound comes not as a satisfying boom, but as a faint metallic clank, like a hammer tapping a pipe. The sonar operator's eyes widen. A hit. A clean hit. But the freighter does not explode. It keeps moving, stubborn and alive. A groan runs through the control room like a wave. Not shouting, not rage. Just the exhausted disappointment of men watching the enemy escape again. The captain's face tightens. He is a professional, but he is also a hunter watching his prey walk away wounded but not dead. He orders the periscope up again and sees the freighter slowing only slightly, perhaps taking water, perhaps not. The escort begins to turn, alerted by the impact or the wake. Time closes like a fist. The captain decides to surface at night, hours later, in darkness thick enough to swallow the horizon. The submarine breaks the surface and runs with only the bridge exposed. The air outside feels clean and cold compared to the sour breath inside. The captain stands on the bridge, wind slapping his face, and he can smell the damaged freighter ahead. It is still there, limping, black silhouette against a faint sky. He orders the deck gun manned. The gun crew moves fast, practiced, working in whispers and hand signals. The first shell is loaded. The gun captain lines up the shot. When the gun fires, the flash is brief and violent, like a camera bulb exploding in the night. The shell hits the freighter's hull and sparks bloom. Men on the freighter shout. A tracer arcs from somewhere on its deck. The freighter is armed, at least lightly, and now the surface fight begins. Absurd and terrifying. A submarine, built to be invisible, is trading blows like a small cruiser. The captain knows it cannot last. He knows aircraft could appear at dawn. He knows the escort might blunder into range. He orders quick shots. He orders the freighter finished. The gun barks again and again, each recoil shaking the bridge, each shell hammering the target. Finally, the freighter's silhouette changes. It lists. It slows. It begins to sink by the stern. The ocean takes it grudgingly. The submarine slips away before daylight. That is how many American captains are forced to fight in 1943. Not with perfect torpedo kills at a safe distance, but with dangerous, close, improvisational violence. Their war is full of frustration and risk. Their success is real, but it is not yet the clean strangulation it will become. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Japanese admirals watch the merchant shipping reports like men watching a slow bleeding wound. They see the numbers of ships lost and the tonnage sinking, but they also see convoys surviving more often than they fear. They tell themselves that escorts, air patrols, and sheer distance are limiting the threat. They do not see the American submarine captains changing. They do not see them getting smarter, more aggressive, more experienced. They do not see the growing wolf pack tactics, the way boats are starting to share information, to position themselves at choke points, to predict the enemy rather than chase him. And they definitely do not see the quiet war happening inside the American Navy itself. A war of engineers, inspectors, and angry commanders arguing over why torpedoes fail. In Pearl Harbor and at stateside yards, men tear down torpedoes and study detonators. They drop them into test pits. They argue about depth-keeping mechanisms and exploder designs. They do not do this for glory. They do it because submariners are coming back with the same story, again and again. And too many of those stories end with the words that make every officer's stomach twist. Target escaped, or worse, boat lost. By late 1943, the change begins to spread through the fleet like a whispered promise. The torpedoes are being corrected, depth issues addressed, exploder problems reduced. The details do not matter to the men at sea as much as the first proof. It happens on a patrol when a captain fires, and the torpedo hits, and the explosion follows instantly, full and violent, tearing a ship open the way it was always supposed to. No dull clank, no sickening silence, just the brutal confirmation that the weapon has finally become trustworthy. In one control room, after a clean detonation, sailors look at each other with a strange expression, half joy, half disbelief. The captain grips the periscope handles and exhales slowly. Like a man who has been holding his breath for a year, word travels fast among submariners, faster than official bulletins, faster than reports. Boat crews talk in mess lines and on piers. They share the news the way starving men share rumors of food. Now the torpedo works, and with that, the invisible battlefield changes shape. Because the Japanese have been fighting an enemy that was sharp but often blunted by its own faulty teeth. Now those teeth are filed to points. Now every perfect approach can become a perfect kill. Now a convoy can lose ships in minutes rather than hours. Now escorts can be forced into panic patterns rather than deliberate searches. The admirals in Tokyo still do not understand the timing. They still think of the submarine war as an annoyance, a constant irritation. They do not feel the hinge of history turning. They do not yet sense that from this point on, the sea lanes will not merely be threatened, They will be hunted. January 22nd, 1944. The East China Sea, west of Okinawa. Winter wind combs the waves into short, angry ridges. A Japanese convoy pushes north in staggered columns, smoke trailing low under a gray sky. The merchant captains keep station by instinct and fear. They have been ordered to zigzag, to maintain blackout at night, to hold radio silence unless attacked. These orders are repeated so often they have become a chant. The escort commander, a lieutenant commander in a worn destroyer escort, stands on his bridge with binoculars glued to his face. His ship is small, underpowered, and overloaded with responsibility. He has a sonar set that works when the ocean cooperates. Today the sea is rough, and rough seas make liars of equipment. Below the surface, 2 American submarines are already in position, each separated by miles but tied together by shared expectation. They are not meeting by accident. This is not one lone hunter stumbling across prey. This is planning, route prediction, and patience. Somewhere, earlier, a submarine reported convoy movement. Somewhere else, commanders plotted likely courses. And now, in this strip of ocean, the trap waits with its jaws open. In the first submarine, the captain peers through the periscope and sees what every submariner dreams of. Multiple targets. A tanker, a freighter heavy with cargo, another transport likely packed with troops or machinery. The escort pattern is visible, but thin. The convoy is stretched. The wind and chop reduce visibility. It is perfect. He does not need to close as dangerously as before. The torpedoes now behave like weapons, not suggestions. He chooses the tanker first. The attack begins with quiet precision. The captain calls out bearings. The fire control party feeds data into the computer. The torpedo room reports tubes ready. The men do not cheer. They do not crack jokes. They have learned that confidence is not loud. It is steady breathing and hands that do not shake. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. The submarine slides deeper, periscope down, and waits. The first detonation comes like a distant door slammed by a giant. The second follows. Then the third. Close enough together that it sounds like one long tearing roar. The sonar operator hears metal splitting, hears the terrible rush of air, hears the frantic acceleration of propellers as ships try to turn away from a death they cannot see. On the convoy, the tanker erupts. Flame climbs in a black column, thick with burning fuel. Men on nearby freighters stare in disbelief as the sea itself seems to catch fire. The convoy commander shouts orders. Signal lamps blink. Whistles scream. The merchant line breaks apart as captains instinctively turn away from the blaze. That is exactly what the submariners want. The convoy is no longer a disciplined group. It is a scattering of individual ships, each one easier to kill. The escort commander turns hard toward the explosion. Desperate to save something, he orders depth charges armed. He orders sonar sweeps. He orders speed. But every move is a guess because he cannot see the enemy. He is reacting to effects, not causes. In the American submarine below, the captain hears the escort closing fast. He orders silent running. The boat becomes still. Men freeze where they stand. Even breathing feels too loud. The escort passes overhead. Sonar pinging, a sharp metallic pulse that feels like a finger tapping on the submarine's skull. Ping, ping, ping. The captain listens for the subtle change that means the escort has a solid contact. He does not hear it. He hears uncertainty. He hears the escort weaving, trying to catch a ghost in rough water. Then depth charges drop. Explosions pound the sea. The submarine shudders. Light fixtures swing. A gauge needle trembles. A valve leaks a fine mist. A sailor clamps it with a rag and a wrench. His face pale but controlled. The captain stays deep. He waits. Above, the escort's pattern is frantic and wide. It is not disciplined. It is not coordinated with aircraft because there are no aircraft here. Not in this weather, not reliably. The escort has a limited number of depth charges and no guarantee any of them are close. And while the escort chases Aruma, the second American submarine moves in. This second boat is positioned ahead of the convoy's likely escape route. The captain here sees ships turning, scattering, trying to run north or east. One transport breaks away, alone. Its escort too busy or too far to cover it. The submarine's periscope tracks it smoothly. The captain fires a spread. This time, the result is immediate. 2 hits. Explosions that fold the transport's side inward. The ship begins to list, then to settle. Lifeboats splash into the winter sea. Men jump. Tiny black dots against grey water. The submarine does not linger. It cannot afford sentiment. It dives and slips away, leaving the ocean to take what it has been given. By the end of that day, the convoy is shattered. Ships burn, sink, or limp toward ports with holes in their sides and fear in their crews. The escorts have spent depth charges and fuel in wild hunts. They have little to show for it. And this is one convoy on one day. In 1944, it becomes a pattern. American submarines appear in the places Japan must use. South of the home islands, in the Luzon Strait, in the South China Sea, along the approaches to Formosa, at the mouth of the inland sea. They wait at choke points like predators at river crossings. The Japanese Navy tries to adapt. Convoys are organized more regularly. Escorts are reassigned. Some merchant ships get rudimentary radar detectors or extra lookouts. Mines are laid in approaches. Coastal patrol craft are deployed. But every improvement meets the same hard reality. Japan's merchant fleet is vast, but not infinite. Its escorts are too few and too often needed elsewhere. Its fuel reserves shrink, limiting training and patrol endurance. Its aircraft are increasingly pulled toward defending against bombing and carrier strikes, leaving less for anti-submarine coverage. The silent war exploits every shortage. A freighter captain in 1944 begins to measure a voyage not in days, but in chances. Each dawn is one more day survived. Each night is a new fear because submarines love the darkness. The crew sleeps in clothes, boots near bunks, because if a torpedo hits, there may be seconds to reach the deck. On the Japanese side, the psychology shifts from annoyance to dread. Reports from convoy commanders start to include phrases that sound like confession. Enemy submarines in the area. Enemy submarines believed multiple. Losses heavy. Escorts unable to prevent attack. Admirals read these lines and feel their strategic maps turning into death certificates. They know the war cannot be fought without ships. Every division in the Philippines, every air base in the Marianas, every garrison on an island depends on cargo moving by sea. Every factory in Japan depends on raw materials arriving from the south. Every aircraft engine needs fuel. Every ship needs spare parts. Submarines attack that entire system with torpedoes that now work, and with crews that now know exactly where to strike. The results are not only sunk hulls. They are empty warehouses. They are grounded aircraft. They are destroyers sitting in harbor because there is not enough fuel to patrol. They are soldiers on distant islands living on half rations, watching the horizon for ships that never arrive. And deep in Tokyo, an admiral begins to understand the shape of the disaster. He can still order ships to sea. He can still plan operations. But each plan is built on logistics, and logistics now travel through waters where death is invisible. That is what terrifies him, not the spectacle of a fleet battle, the quiet certainty that, day by day, the sea itself is being taken away from Japan. October 5th, 1944, the Luzon Strait. Between Taiwan and the northern Philippines. Night. The sky is low and starless. The sea a restless black that hides everything except the thin wakes of ships. A Japanese convoy pushes through the strait because it has to, There are no alternate oceans. The merchantmen are loaded with oil and ore, the kind of cargo that makes the Empire breathe. On the lead escort, the captain orders strict blackout. No smoking on deck, no careless flashlight. Lookouts are doubled, eyes watering in the wind. A few months ago, these orders were routine. Now they are ritual. Below, an American submarine sits at periscope depth, barely moving. The captain is older than he was in 1943, not by years, but by the weight of patrols. His face is lean, his eyes permanently tired. Yet his hands are steady because his boat is doing what it was built to do. He raises the periscope just enough to catch silhouettes, multiple targets. Tight water, predictable lanes, a convoy forced through a funnel. He does not rush. He does not need to gamble. He watches the escorts first, the way they pace, the angles they favor, the blind spots they create. He waits for the escort's turn, the small moment when attention points away. Then he slides into position and fires. Torpedoes cut forward through cold water, silent and purposeful. Inside the submarine, the men are still, counting the seconds in their heads. They have all heard the same sound so many times that they can imagine it before it arrives. Boom. Then another. A ship above is struck hard enough that men on deck are thrown to their knees. An oil tanker blossoms into fire, the flame spreading across the water like a living thing. Another freighter takes a hit and begins to sag, its bow dipping as if it is suddenly tired. The escorts react instantly, turning hard, making speed, dropping depth charges in the places they guess the submarine might be. But now the Americans have learned to make escorts chase shadows. The submarine dives deeper, turns away, and goes quiet. The depth charges shake it, but the patterns are broad and the ocean is huge. The captain is already repositioning in his mind, already thinking about the next target. Because this is not a single dramatic strike. It is a campaign of repetition. By late 1944, Japanese merchant shipping is being forced into tighter convoys. But tighter convoys mean bigger kills when submarines get in. A single successful American attack can cripple multiple ships in minutes, even when ships do not sink immediately. Damage forces them to limp to port, consuming tug resources, repair capacity, and time Japan cannot spare. And the convoy escorts are running out of everything that matters. They run out of fuel first, not all at once. Quietly, like a man losing blood and not noticing until he stands up. Fuel shortages mean fewer training exercises, fewer sonar drills, less time at sea hunting submarines, more time tied up at docks with crews that grow rusty and anxious. They also run out of experienced men. The war in the air and on the surface bleeds the Navy constantly. New crews are assigned to escorts with only basic training. They know the theory of anti-submarine warfare. They do not have the instinct. In the American submarine force, instinct is becoming a weapon. Patrol after patrol, captains learn where the Japanese must sail. They learn the timing of coastal traffic. They learn the way escorts behave when nervous. They learn that a convoy often has one weak point, one careless zig, one ship that drifts slightly out of line. And the Americans have other eyes now. Reconnaissance and signals intelligence tighten the net. When a convoy leaves port, it is often not a secret for long. Submarines can be vectored toward likely routes. A captain might arrive at a choke point already knowing that prey is coming. To the Japanese, it feels like the ocean itself is betraying them. December 1944. Inland sea approaches. A small coastal tanker moves at dusk, hugging shoreline routes to avoid the open ocean. The captain is hoping that land will shield him. He has heard stories of ships attacked just miles from home. He has heard the word used by terrified sailors, sharks. The tanker's crew stands watch, staring at water that looks harmless. The coastline is visible. Fishing boats sit like dark specks. It should feel safe. Then a torpedo hits. The explosion lifts the stern and throws men across the deck. Flames roar up. The shock is not only physical, but emotional. Home waters are no longer home. For Japanese admirals, this is the nightmare made real. Their sea defenses are collapsing inward. American submarines are not just raiding distant routes. They are prowling the approaches to Japan itself. The Admiralty orders more measures, increased mines, more patrol craft, more coastal convoys, more rules, more paperwork. But rules do not replace hulls. Every new convoy needs escorts, but escorts are limited. Every new patrol needs fuel, but fuel is precious. Every mine laid requires a ship to lay it and a plan to avoid it. And mines can kill your own shipping as easily as the enemy's if charts and discipline fail under stress. And stress is everywhere. At a naval staff meeting, an admiral listens to reports of merchant losses and feels his options shrinking. He can push ships through and accept losses, or he can slow shipping and accept shortages. Either choice is defeat shaped differently. By early 1945, the effects ripple through everything. Factories slow. The flow of oil is strangled. Aircraft training declines. Naval units are forced to conserve fuel for imagined decisive battles that never come. While the day-to-day war is already being lost in the shipping lanes, on distant islands, the impact is even more cruel. Garrison troops wait for resupply that does not arrive. Their diet shrinks. Ammunition is rationed. Medical supplies vanish. They watch American planes appear more often overhead, because the Americans have fuel and parts and a supply line that works. In the submarine, the American captain does not see those distant islands. He sees only targets and the quiet arithmetic of tonnage. One more tanker sunk means one less sortie by enemy aircraft. One more freighter sunk means one less shipment of ore to a steel mill. One more transport sunk means one less reinforcement reaching a front. The silent war is not silent to the men who live it. Inside the submarine, every attack is loud with tension. Every depth charge makes the hull ring. Every creak of steel under pressure reminds the crew that the ocean does not forgive mistakes. But to Japanese admirals, the war feels silent because it offers no clear duel. No battle line, no fleet to engage. Only missing ships, only empty fuel tanks, only reports that arrive too late to stop what has already happened. And by mid-1945, as the home islands brace for bombing and invasion rumors, the submarine war has already done something more intimate than destruction. It has made Japan afraid of its own seas. June 10th, 1945. The waters off Honshu, not far from familiar coastlines and fishing villages. A small Japanese coastal convoy creeps along in early morning haze, hugging land as if proximity to home might ward off danger. The lead ship is a modest escort, its paint weathered, its crew thin and exhausted. Behind it, a few small cargo ships and tankers move in a line, their wakes short, their speed cautious. On the escort's bridge, the captain watches the shoreline and the sea simultaneously, as if he can split his eyes into two separate minds. He has been trained to look for aircraft and surface ships, but now his greatest threat is water that looks empty. The sound operator calls out sonar sweeps in a tired voice. The equipment pings and returns echoes that could be rocks, fish, or death. The captain knows what he is really doing. He is guarding hunger. Every crate in those holds matters. Rice, salt, coal, fuel oil in drums, spare parts that should have been delivered months ago. These are not glamorous cargoes, not the kind that win medals, but without them, cities darken and factories fall quiet. And beneath them, in the same waters, an American submarine is already there. It is an older boat now, scarred in ways that are not visible from the outside. The crew is a mix of veterans and replacements. The veterans move like men who have survived too many close calls to waste motion. The new men try to imitate them, learning that fear in a submarine is managed, not eliminated. The captain raises the periscope only briefly. He sees small targets. Nothing like the fat convoys of 1944. Japan's shipping has shrunk and scattered. The Empire's arteries are now thin threads, and still he is here to cut them. He feels no triumph. He feels grim obligation. He selects the tanker. The torpedo room reports ready. The captain calls the solution. The men have done this so many times that it feels like routine. But routine in war is only repetition of risk. Fire. The torpedo runs. The submarine dives. The crew waits. The explosion comes. A dull roar that carries through the hull and into bones. The tanker above shudders, lists, and begins to burn. The escort turns hard and begins dropping depth charges almost immediately. Not because it has a clear contact, but because doing nothing feels like surrender down in the submarine. The captain orders deeper. The boat slides under a thermal layer, using the ocean itself as cover. The sonar operator listens as the escort screws churn and the pings search. Blind and angry. Depth charges detonate above and behind, close enough to rattle plates, far enough to spare them. The escort captain is sweating, but not from heat. He is sweating from helplessness. He has been handed a mission that cannot be fully accomplished with what he has: limited sonar performance, limited fuel, limited depth charges, limited training time for his crew. He is trying to protect ships that cannot replace themselves, in waters where the enemy can appear without warning. The convoy scatters, and scattering is death. A cargo ship turns toward the coast. Another turns out to sea, hoping speed will save it. The escort can only choose one direction, and every choice abandons someone. This is the pattern in 1945. Not a glorious clash, but a slow, brutal strangulation. Far above this morning haze, the strategic reality is already decided. Japan's navy is constrained by fuel shortages. Training flights are reduced. Ships remain in harbor to conserve what little oil remains for a final desperate defense that may never happen. The merchant marine, once the bloodstream of the Empire, has been cut down by years of submarine attacks. And in the rooms where admirals meet, the fear is no longer about the next convoy. It is about the impossibility of recovery. They can order new escorts, but there is not enough steel, not enough shipyard capacity, not enough time. They can order more mines, but mines do not solve the problem of moving supplies, and mined waters complicate their own traffic. They can order air patrols, but aircraft need fuel, trained pilots, and parts, all of which are increasingly scarce. They can order convoys to sail at night, but submarines hunt at night. They can order convoys to hug the coast, but submarines have already shown they can strike near home. It becomes a trap made of geography and arithmetic. In coastal cities, civilians begin to feel the war not only in sirens and bomb craters, but in daily life. Food is rationed tighter. Goods vanish. Transportation falters. Factories slow or stop. The connection between an explosion at sea and a darkened home is not always obvious, but the chain is real and unbreakable. On the submarine, the American captain watches the convoy's survivors through the periscope when it is safe. He sees lifeboats, smoke, small figures in the water. He does not linger. He lowers the scope and turns away, because the war has taught him that sympathy cannot change orders, and hesitation can kill his crew. He knows Japanese admirals fear this war because it cannot be confronted on their terms. There is no battle line to form against a submarine, no decisive volley, no flagship to sink and declare victory. The submarine does not ask permission to fight. It chooses time and place. It strikes and disappears. And the quiet of that disappearance is what breaks the mind of a commander trained for visible wars. After each sinking, the sea returns to calm. Waves close over the wreck. Smoke drifts away. The horizon looks normal again. But the damage remains, not only in steel and oil, but in trust. Trust in routes, trust in schedules, trust that the Navy can protect what the nation needs. By the summer of 1945, that trust is gone. In the final weeks of the conflict, Japanese planners are left managing scarcity instead of strategy. They make lists of what cannot be delivered. They prioritize one port over another. They accept that some garrisons will starve. They accept that some factories will not run. They accept that ships leaving harbor may not return. And the men at sea feel it most sharply. A merchant captain stands on a deck at night, looking at the dark water and listening to his own engine, every thrum sounding like a beacon. He knows the ocean is full of unseen eyes. He knows an American submarine might be nearby, patient, silent, and unafraid. That is why Japanese admirals feared the silent war beneath the sea, because it turned the Pacific into an invisible battlefield where courage and tradition could not guarantee safety, because it attacked the empire at its weakest point, the long lifeline of shipping that made conquest possible. Because once American torpedoes became reliable and submarines operated with experience and coordination, the contest was no longer about winning a battle. It was about whether Japan could continue to exist as a functioning industrial nation at war. The answer came not with a single decisive day, but with a slow starving of steel, fuel, and hope. And long after the last convoy limped into harbor, long after the last depth charge detonated into empty water, the fear remained in the memory of those who had commanded ships and watched them vanish. A war fought in silence, leaving only absence behind.